Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff, and joining me is my co-host, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and expert investment analyst, Terrence Hollingsworth. Terry, are you there?
Hello, Dr. Ratliff. Hello, Let's Talk Maywood.
What's going on, brother? It's been a while. I hope you had a good summer and a good fall so far. The weather is changing, and so is the economy, and soon so is the president. So
yes,
a lot
sir,
going
yes,
on,
sir.
man. What's going on in your world? You've been traveling. What's been going on?
Yeah, you know, I had a real good summer. I got to go out to Alabama and Memphis for part of the summer.
Nice.
Spent another part of the summer hiking in Colorado, which
nice.
was yeah, it was good. I wanted to go to the incline, but I couldn't. It was wildfires on the way. They redirected me in a different way. So maybe I'll get out to the incline next summer. So
nice. Understood. Well, the market has been, as I mentioned, changing winds. The Federal Reserve cut the interest rate from by half a basis point, and because of that, inflation dropped from 9% to 2.4%. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I mean, here's the truth. The Federal Reserve had raised interest rates, and they purposely were trying to slow down the economy. The target is still 2% inflation. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're close, and so therefore, they're cutting rates now because they don't want it to get below 2%. But the point is, I think that whatever happens in the market, whatever the Federal Reserve does with interest rates, we have to have some exposure to the market, right? And that's probably I was telling somebody the other day. I said, I wasn't looking too great as a advisor, right? Making recommendations, maybe for probably 6 or 8 months. We were buying stuff that wasn't happening, wasn't moving, but that's what the market did. And, the truth is that in the last 30 days, everything that any doubt that was there, it is evaporated, right? These positions are now doing what we always knew that they would do, right?
Yeah.
So, we make recommendations, we invest based off of what we see happening in the economy. And NVIDIA, for example, I didn't publicly make a recommendation for NVIDIA, but privately I have been. And so we have some people that own it at around 17 to 20. It went north of 30, then it dropped below 100, right? Then it went back up to the mid 20s, and then it came back to about 109. And every time it pulled back, we were buying. And today it's at, I think it hit 140 today.
Wow.
And what do we know about NVIDIA though? NVIDIA they stand alone in terms of chips that they make that we need to power AI, right? And so everyone's portfolio should have some exposure to AI. They should probably own some NVIDIA. And because when we look out 5 years from now, we know that everybody pretty much that has to deal with this AI stuff, they have to buy NVIDIA chips, right? And that's not the only investment that you can make towards artificial intelligence. Is probably the best, right? And so, but that's how market works, right? You buy things, you dollar cost average into them if they pull back, and then you manage the position, and then you sell some, as it starts to work out. So, the most thing we have to say is please invest, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, please.
Do you think that the Federal Reserve will cut the rate once more before the end of this calendar year?
Honestly, I don't care. I mean, what they probably will. I think in the investment world, we get too caught up in predicting things, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
the stock is going to make this money or Federal Reserve is going to cut. The part that we have to be clear about is when something happens, how does it affect the ideas or the things that we're invested in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if they cut interest rates, will that slow down people buying cars? Will more people qualify for mortgages, things
Right.
like that? And if they do, then how much exposure, how much should we be investing in those sectors of the market, right?
Right. Right.
And sometimes we get caught just going, one of my biggest pet peeves is what? Go invest in S&P 500
Mm-hmm.
and, don't worry about nothing else, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you could do that and you be up 18%. I had a friend of mine that was looking at their portfolio and, they had said they wanted to know if they should, how's her portfolio doing comparable to mutual funds S&P 500. Well, when she
Mm.
looked, S&P I think is up 18%. Her portfolio is up 30 something percent, right?
Nice. Nice. Nice.
So individual stocks will give you, you know, greater gains, the
Mm.
truth, but also, um, again, you're going to do just fine if you own mutual funds, right?
Yeah.
And the
Absolutely.
thing is, have some exposure, especially as it relates to your retirement. You don't have a pension that you can rely on. You should
Right.
rely only on the amount of money that you save and invest.
For sure. One other question. I know the election season is here for mainly president. Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. They all tout the economy, how they're going to save the U.S. economy, make it stronger, build
Yeah.
back America. So all that rhetoric. What are your thoughts about that, based on what you have heard or seen from both candidates?
So the thing that I would say more than anything else is there's a conversation about tariffs right now.
Yeah.
There are conversations about who benefits from a corporate tax increase. Donald Trump wants to
Mm-hmm.
increase corporate income tax. Kamala Harris wants to I'm sorry, Donald
She
Trump
wants to
wants to
decrease.
decrease
Mm-hmm.
the corporate income tax,
Yeah.
and
Kamala wants to
Kamala
increase.
Harris wants to increase them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the thing that we have to understand is a lot of these conversations come down to how does that affect consumer prices? Which one of these things are consumer pass-through costs? Tariffs are a pass-through cost.
Right.
Corporate increases on taxes is a pass-through cost. So
Mm-hmm.
you may pay a vote to increase um, corporate tax, but will that show up in one or two ways? One, a decreased workforce because they have to pay more into, salaried employees or even hourly employees. The
Yeah.
other one is the pass through cost of if their cost to make something. We call it input costs. So
Right.
if the input cost rises by 10%, then they don't eat that. What they do is they raise consumer prices, or you
Right.
have shrinkflation, right?
Right.
So we've seen that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where the packaging gets smaller, the price stays the same.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. That's
it's
also
not
called
a
the
yeah,
this economies of scale. So from an economic standpoint, they're doing that to reduce the unit price, or to
yeah,
keep the unit price the same or up, but the quantity lower is what's happening.
yeah.
So, and that
Yeah,
takes
so
me,
it's not
yeah,
a. It's really it's a complex problem to solve, but at the end of the day, we're responsible for how we spend. And this is the last thing I'll say. I'm not credit card. The credit card debt in the U.S. is 1.4 or 5 trillion dollars at this
Trillion.
point, higher than what it's been for pre-COVID. So when you look at your neighbors that are looking really nice, red bottom shoes and all of the nice fancy purses or whatever it might be, please understand that they probably are financing their lifestyle on a credit card. Right?
Yeah.
That's what the data is telling us.
Yeah.
And even more fearful that they're living their life, they're paying their bills and groceries and stuff
For a credit card.
On that credit card. And that's not that's terrible. And so we have to be personal about the way we think about money and how we spend it and what we deserve, right? Because sometimes there's a lot of conversation going, I work hard every day, I deserve this.
Right.
So I don't determine that for people, but how do you deal with the emergency situation that comes up? How do you deal with these actual life things that happen? And so we just got to keep these things in the forefront and do our best and invest, right?
Yeah. Invest.
The truth is the way that we beat inflation. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. The way we beat inflation. Go ahead.
The way that we beat inflation is by investing in the stock market at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So that's whatever fear that you have, sit down and talk to someone and help them simplify this stuff. Reggie and me are a good source for that, but this is almost your only alternative.
So if you have any questions about investing or finances, if you need support as it relates to controlling credit debt, reach out to me and we'd love to talk to you. And I can be reached at sratliff68@yahoo.com. As Terry mentioned, we've been in finance for over 2 decades. We both bring an area expertise as it relates to providing financial counseling. We do have classes as well as workshops in person or virtually, thanks to technology. But it starts with the email. So reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. We looked at, Terry, at everything from a macro standpoint. Now we're going to shrink it to a micro standpoint. What's going on in Maywood? And that's why I'm happy that we have our next guest, Trustee Miguel Jons, Maywood Trustee, Village of Maywood Trustee Miguel Jons, because Maywood is something that's passionate for me. And, when I see what's going on in the Village of Maywood, there's continuous opportunities for improvement. And I'm glad to have good brothers on the podcast like Trustee Jones, who kind of lays it out what's going on within the realms of the walls of the Village of Maywood that the public really don't hear until public comments are made. And maybe sometimes it doesn't come across accurately as far as the information through mainstream media or even social media. So inviting Trustee Jones to kind of straighten out some crosshairs or things that are not very transparent. I'm glad to have him on the podcast. And without further ado, Trustee Miguel Jons. Good evening, Doctor. How you doing, Trustee Jones?
Dr. Ratliff, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How about you?
Can't complain, man. Glad to have you on the podcast. You've been on several times and you've been totally transparent. You have answered questions, whether they were simple or difficult, whether it's complex or whatever needed explanation. So we're glad to have you this evening. And, I want to jump right into it. There's some hot button items that needs to be explained. And I'm glad you're here to explain. Let's talk about what's going on within the Village of Maywood from a summary standpoint. If you could kind of give us what the state of Maywood is from that level, then please, by all means, share the information with us.
Yeah, so, I would say the state of Maywood is we are progressing. So, based on a lot of state and federal resources, we've been doing a lot of infrastructure improvement, a lot of purchasing of equipment and public safety vehicles. So, we're really proud of that. We just recently announced a $95 million investment for First Avenue, right in conjunction with the 290 Eisenhower Expressway. So that's going to alleviate a lot of traffic, improve some signaling, et cetera. We also received money for Washington Boulevard and the Prairie Path and a bunch of alleys in Maywood. And so, we're excited. We're moving forward, but there's still a lot of opportunities, right? A lot of vacant parcels still. Crime has decreased, but we're still seeing a lot of unfortunate, issues of like vandalism and assaults and, other crimes that we need to pay attention to. And so the community's going in the right direction, but we have some opportunities coming up, and the voters of Maywood are going to have some decisions coming up in April. And so I'm here to educate the folks from my perspective and to, share any value that I can.
Well, thank you very much for that start. And what I want to do is go right into, as you talked about, the elections that are coming up, and as it relates to the municipal government and the elections, and even more specifically from a more microcosm, the salary increases that would take place next term as it relates to the trustee positions and the village mayor position. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as the dynamics of that and the vote that went forward and all that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, just so everyone knows, there is a municipal election for mayor, village trustee at the municipal level, but also there's an election at the library, park district, township. There's a bunch of local elections. So I want to encourage everyone to participate. What happened last month in September was the board made a decision, and actually Mayor Booker was the tie-breaking vote. So it passed 4-3 to increase the trustee salary from $7,800 to $14,000, and to increase the mayor's salary from $15,600, I believe, to $65,000. That's almost about a 400% increase. And then the clerk also received a increase as well. I think in the range of about $10,000 or so. And so you might be wondering, okay, why did we do this and how did we come to this decision? So ultimately, the mayor had the attorney draft up a memo to increase the salaries for, as you mentioned, the board that'll be elected in April, and also the 3 trustees that will be elected in 2027. And so the reason was, was for twofold. One was to, of course, increase the salary, and the mayor was really more so focused on on the mayoral seat, which was currently at $15,000. I do want to give a caveat that I'm not necessarily against salary increases. I mean, you do want to pay your elected officials. It is hard work. It's very important work. How we went about it is what I disagreed, and I want to explain. So there's 2 or 3 main points I want to bring up. One is our form of government. So we have a council manager form of government. And so we hire a full-time manager to manage the day-to-day operations of the town. And so our elected officials are part-time. There's other form of governments like the city of Chicago, Bellwood, Broadview, Illinois, that are strong mayor forms of government where those mayors make full-time salaries. But they also, have full-time responsibilities and day-to-day responsibilities in their role. And so one of the reasons why I didn't want to increase it that high is because I wanted to make sure the community understood that our roles are still part-time. And so the second reason to tie into that was based on the comps. Maywood will, in our next election, have the highest paid part-time mayor in the state, and likely one of the highest paid in the country, at $65,000 a year. And so I didn't think, compared to our neighbors that have similar forms of government, such as the Village of Oak Park, the Village of River Forest, Evanston, Illinois, Barrington, Elmhurst, those are communities Westchester, that have council manager or village, manager forms of government, and that have part-time elected officials. that serve on a board of trustees. And so I would rather align more so with those salaries. And then lastly, I would have preferred for a measure like that to go on the ballot for a referendum. Essentially the board is, responsible to the residents, and those are our bosses. And so I think a salary increase of that magnitude should have went to the residents, especially if, the mayor is going to be the tie-breaking vote. And it is a little presumptuous, right? I mean, it also didn't, and I'll wrap up with this, it didn't really give the community an opportunity to react to this pay increase. So for example, if you're a citizen and you hear about this now, if you wanted to participate and run the election, you'd have a very short window, as petitions need to be in by the third week of November. And so it really aligned, and it was very presumptuous with our current elected officials. So those are probably the 3 or 4 main reasons why I didn't support it, and why I think the community should be aware, because ultimately their tax dollars that have already increased will be paying for this salary increase going forward.
So right now, the village is still insolvent, meaning it's still in the red, correct? It has not
Correct.
broken even. It's not in the black. It's still working towards getting towards break even.
The village is still in a deficit of multiple millions of dollars. We have been working toward that, but I will say this is going in the opposite direction, right?
Yeah.
And so we are still in the red. We are in debt, multiples of millions of dollars, and we're interested in doing the mayor is entertaining taking out hundreds of millions of dollars in bonds for different, incentives, and creating different TIF districts. And so a lot of those things are really going to impact our residents. And so we just want to be careful about and sensitive to our taxpayer resources, because we have a lot of residents that are on fixed incomes or work really, really hard to pay the taxes that are in our community.
Absolutely. And so with that being said, property taxes are high. A lot of people are overwhelmed with tax debt as it relates to property taxes, inclusive of having fixed income, some working 2 jobs. A lot of single parents out there, as you mentioned, that you're trying to, put some of these things in place as it relates to crime and, creating, employment for the village, increasing that, and just having a sustainable village. And when you think about the money that's coming in from the casino, I know it's coming in, but it's not going to turn Maywood into black overnight. So my question, Trustee Jones, is why didn't it go on a referendum? And what justification can you put out there to say a part-time mayor receiving a tremendous jump from just above 15.5 to 65,000 on a part-time status? And I saw the article that made the announcement, and I guess quote verbatim is, because I do work full-time, as if I'm a full-time mayor, but he's still a part-time mayor, and there's a full-time village manager. So doesn't that put more of a stressor on the village of Maywood and its budget and trying to get out of debt, even with the casino money coming in?
Yeah, so let me tackle this question in 2 parts. So let me answer, since we were touching base on the salary thing. Essentially, if the village is interested in having a full-time mayor, then we should put on the referendum that we like to change our form of government and let the voters decide on that. Otherwise, then we should subscribe to the form of government that we have. And, just from a historical perspective, Maywood at one point was a strong mayor form of government. We were that since we are a community at large. We decided to have a strong mayor. But in right around the mid-1970s, there was a young mayor named James Pirelli, who was the mayor at the time, and, ultimately clashed with the board, and really the community was really, just was out of control. Police chiefs and fire chiefs and staff aren't showing up to work as in terms of kind of a rejection toward the mayor's leadership. And so at that time, the board had decided to hire a village manager and ultimately change the form of government through going to court and et cetera to a council manager form of government. So historically, I think we need to understand how we got here. And if we want to change directions, I'm more than happy to go with what the community wants to do. But, at the end of the day, we should follow and subscribe to what we have now. And as I mentioned, this form of government works, right? We have neighbors, for instance, Oak Park and River Forest and Evanston and Westchester. They have this type of form of government and it works. Our mayor does put in a lot of work. And truth be told, he is, probably underpaid. So I don't want to discredit the type of work that he puts in. He actually put together a flyer that said that he was averaging a little over 300 hours a month or about 75 hours a week. And although I appreciate his efforts, I did, tell him this at the board meeting that I didn't want to encourage anyone in the village of Maywood to be working more than 40 hours a week. Now, there's going to be exceptions for like officers and public works when emergency happening, but it's not healthy. We talk about a healthy Maywood. It's unhealthy to work those many hours a week. It's unhealthy to not have a work-life balance. We don't want to ask our leaders to work that long because you have incidents. When you're working 75 hours a week, you have incidents like passing out, driving, on the interstate, because you're overworked
Right.
and you're making bad decisions because you make bad decisions when you're overworked and you're doing too much. And so I think I would just like for the community to just kind of revisit that. So, and then also let's use comps. Let's compare the salaries of communities that we would aim to be like in terms like of a safety perspective, infrastructure, median income, success of schools, and then use that as a formula to say, okay, let's work toward that just to make sure we're reasonable. So that's my stance on, that discussion as far as salaries. Let's just make sure that it aligns with the form of government that we have, because we do have a village manager as well. And we don't need two heads of, running the town. So if we want to go a different direction, then we can, then the mayor can be full-time and have a chief of staff. And, that's kind of running the village, or we should subscribe to what we're doing. But right now, we're based on the comps, we're severely and egregiously overpaying for the role. I do want to touch base on your casino comment, but I just want to pause there to see if you can just pause.
No, that's in order. I just want to ask, I guess, in conclusion, those governments that's similar to Maywood's form of government, River Forest and Evanston, in comparison of salaries. I know this doesn't kick into the next mayor or the current mayor repeats, but what is the salary of the current mayors who are working part-time, like in River Forest and others?
So our neighbor right to our east, our trustee colleagues and their mayors, they don't get paid at all. $0 for a salary. They do get, of course, if they're going on a conference or travel or doing something, work related or village related, they will get, the village will pay for it.
I'm sorry, Trustee Jones. The mayor of River Forest, who's part-time, doesn't receive a salary or stipend?
No.
Or anything?
And of course, folks fact check me on this. The village of Oak Park, their mayor doesn't make more than $30,000 a year. The trustees make about $15,000 a year. Because they're part-time role, and because they hire someone, a village administrator or a village manager that's making well into six figures to manage the day-to-day operations of these communities, to handle the financing and all the audits and just managing of staff and public works, garbage and water and all that stuff. They're managing that. Our jobs are policymakers, advocacy, bringing in resources for our town, the brand of our town, representing our community, and then also passing the budget and then being the boss of that village manager and village administrator. That's our job.
If this is the case, where the other mayors are receiving $30,000 or $0, certainly their position economically is stronger than Maywood's at this time. Although I commend you and the board and Mayor Booker for your efforts in turning Maywood around, so to speak, because you had a lot to deal with in this current administration. However, still insolvent, still in the red. the residents, including my family, still have high property taxes. We're still burdened with debt.
Yeah.
How do we justify an increase even next
Well,
election cycle? I'm just help
I
me understand that in my
yeah.
PhD knowledge in
So
economics.
and then Dr. Ratliff, I think it's about again being reasonable. So you want to pay people a fair wage based on the market, right? So I'm not against salary increases, but you want to be reasonable. But to your point about Maywood, although I believe our community is improving, we're far from being brought back. We're far from being the community that we should be, right? A bunch of vacant parcels, where we're missing out on millions of dollars in sales taxes. Actually, a report just came out from Maria Papas's office talking about how Maywood is in the top 10% in a bad way as far as communities that send out bills for property taxes, but we collect the least. We're collecting about, don't quote me, we're in the 80-some% range of the bills that we're sending out versus what we're collecting. So what that means is essentially we're working off less money than what we're billed. Although Maywood's property tax rate went down, our property taxes went up because our properties were reassessed and assessed really high. And so Maywood's most of Maywood's property owners are paying more money. And part of that is because one, we're not collecting taxes on a lot of these vacant properties. And because these vacant properties aren't on the tax roll. For instance, First and Lake has been vacant for a really long time. And, like that area, is our, in terms of traffic, is our busiest street, First Avenue, which is also Interstate 171, Roosevelt Road, Lake Street, like those streets and those corridors, Fifth Avenue, we need to be getting sales taxes from that.
Yeah.
Our economy, we need to be hiring people at these, whether it be fast food restaurants or whether it be at these coffee shops or these bookstores or whatever open up. That's how you generate the economy that Maywood needs. And then maybe then would it be appropriate to pay someone the salary that our current board just passed? But we have to make up for a lot of issues. And sometimes when you've been kind of down on the rut, when you do see some wins, you start to be, you get excited. It's almost like people that win the lottery, they've never had it before, right? So you get overly excited. Right. Maybe we didn't necessarily win the lottery. We won the scratch off, right? We got $20. That don't mean, okay, let me go, get a new car and this and that, right? We got to calm down. We've made some progress, but we're a long way to go. And our leaders need to remain humble, and they need to remain, really building coalitions, right? And so that's what I'm focused on is kind of building coalitions, whether it be local coalitions with, I mentioned our neighbors at Reforest. We were just kayaking not too long ago with the youth. We just got finished bike riding. Right. We were in Maywood and we did, some people did 6 miles, some people did 20 miles. We were riding all over the Proviso Township and, getting close to the Austin community, all through Oak Park, et cetera, building coalitions. I'm actually doing a trip with Mayor Katrina Thompson of Broadview next month. We're hosting about almost 20 Proviso Township folks. We're hosting a trip to Accra, Ghana for 8 days, and looking to build relationships there. So I'm all about, rebranding our community so people understand what it's about, so we can have that economic boom, and building relationships. And that's what I'm focused on.
Nice. I like that. And that all sounds like something that could go in a strategic plan. Everything that you were talking about, the accomplishments that has taken place, the mile ahead in terms of planning. Isn't this all under a strategic plan that needs to be created and implemented by the board, by the village? So it won't seem like you're throwing darts and hoping it sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe strategic plans. I believe things like village manager reviews. There's a few things that you do, going over your budget on a quarterly basis. There's a few things that successful people do they're intentional, right? They're planning, because, if you're not planning to win, you're essentially planning to fail. And so where we are as a strategic plan in the village, it's not clear to me. We do have a comprehensive plan that kind of is a guiding light, but the village board, for the most part, has kind of avoided these type of strategic planning initiatives. From what I can tell, the majority in terms of our board, the culture is for the majority to kind of push things through. So they might have a strategic plan, but the village, in terms of the community itself, doesn't necessarily have a strategic plan. But we want to work on it. And something that's going to include our citizen-led or soon to be revived citizen-led committees and commissions should be driving those conversations. The Maywood Chamber of Commerce, staff, other stakeholders should be driving those conversations about what a strategic plan looks like. It's not just a board of trustees thing, right? It's a community at large initiative, because you need more than just the government sector to be pushing these things. You need the business sector, you need private investors, you need other state and federal eyeballs on this as well. So I would like to encourage, whether it be through our policy committee and Trustee Ray Williams, to maybe start conversations on this so we can present something to the board. Yeah. But there are initiatives that might appear to be a strategic plan, like we have certain things, or the mayor's office has certain initiatives. But as far as a strategic plan, we need to create one. And again, those are things that the community should demand before we're paying someone to be the highest paid elected official in the state.
Absolutely. Because a comprehensive plan is like a financial review that's a prelude to an audit. A comprehensive plan is something that is a prelude for a strategic plan. It seemed like we lost Trustee Jones, Terry. So is there any way you could bring him back? But I like where he was going. Oh, there you are. But I'm not sure if you agree. I was saying that a comprehensive plan is a smaller version of a strategic plan. I mean, this happening in the county background. You're talking about the executive summary. You're talking about, having business tools, the Ansoff matrix, or a SWOT analysis, a Gantt chart, a Boston Consulting Group, a fishbone analysis. And you're talking about the challenges and how you deal with it long term, like an audit is a financial review. But how do we put this plan into action? I heard you say initiatives, but that's not a course of action. An initiative is a pause for the cause, but a plan of action is something that you put out there. That's a comprehensive plan that accelerates into a strategic plan. Because as you said, the village, the residents, it should be demanded. But since it appears that it's not demanded, I would think the village board would take the initiative of creating that. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I think so. Usually at organizations at our level, you're going to hire professionals to help you kind of manage, something like a strategic plan or a comprehensive plan. What I would recommend we do is not necessarily starting from scratch, but, we have a comprehensive plan that we can dust off and, we can revisit, so we don't have to start from scratch. And that's normally, how you should do that as well. So we can amend. And then from there, you kind of create a 5-year, 10-year strategic plan, which, you manage to certain goals. And, so there's certain things that we want to accomplish, whether it be infrastructure related or whether, it be, improving our services, et cetera. And so we need to manage that. But, as I mentioned, those things involve, not just the municipality, but, you have school districts and park districts and et cetera.
Businesses, small businesses, and
small businesses, residents. So you want to get all those folks involved, and you want to, my recommendation would really to have some sort of third party help manage that, because you want that to be nonpartisan. Right. You want it to be where the best ideas are and where, you're getting some expertise involved. Because the one thing about elected officials, a lot of us do know our communities, et cetera, but we're not necessarily experts in some of these spaces. And so I think that's really important to come up with these 5 and 10-year plans. And, one of the things that I would want Maywood to be focusing on is getting out the red, right? Let's get out of debt so we can finance more significant infrastructure things like replacing our lead water lines, or actually having a pool that we could utilize. I think that's really important. Or other actually having alleys that are not just asphalted over, but where we can actually have concrete alleys and alleys that consider the infrastructure underneath and water drainage and sewage and et cetera. And so those things set you up for future success.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm talking. That's those are things that are important, and those things are happening, right? They're
no
happening. But we just want to make sure too that we don't look again. We want to make sure that we're following the guidelines that are created for our community, right? Like either so whether that means we're in a council manager form of government or we're in a strong mayor form of government, I'm all with it. What I'm not for is a super mayor form of government, similar to what they have, in the south suburbs, where you have elected officials, operating in a really in a fashion that is distasteful and
chaotic,
and and quite frankly, for the residents, is really disgraceful. Quite frankly. So those are the things that you want to limit. And I think when you start bringing money involved, especially in a community like Maywood, you just want to be sensitive to the fact that we do have residents that really struggle to pay their taxes. We have elected officials that don't even pay their property taxes on time. I'm just saying.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that you're just being sensitive of the visual, right? Because other towns see this and they say, oh man,
no question.
No question. And I know Maywood is a lot of work. I get it. But we need leaders that are living in their overflow. Right. We need leaders that are successful in the private market and that can lean on that success to allow more freedom so they can have the time to commit to our town. We don't, one of the kickbacks for why, or one of the pushbacks for why folks are hesitant about young leaders is because usually when you're young, you're looking to max out you're trying to maximize your income potential.
Right.
And so a lot of time when you're going into places, that are servant leadership roles like council boards, et cetera, those aren't the type of places where you're maximizing your income base. And so that's where the challenge comes in. And so you need unique individuals in these spaces, people that have the ability to have a work-life balance, take care of their family, have the ability to delegate because they understand they can't do everything, and then also be able to be successful. And we have those people in Maywood. And those are the people that we need to be leading us and helping the folks that, are kind of overcome with just some of the day-to-day hurdles. It's our job to make sure that we're supporting them.
Because I would think, Trustee Jones, if the mayor, to his credit, is putting forth the effort, but if he has to work 60, 65, 70 hours, 75 hours a week, when you already have a full-time person, the village manager, there's something wrong. There's something inherently wrong with that picture if he has to invest that amount of time by his own choice, So does that mean the village manager isn't strong, or does that mean that the structure in place, the infrastructure is, is everybody's not doing what they're supposed to?
We're disorganized. We're disorganized because we've had a lot of turnover. Maywood has probably had about 4 village managers. Since I've been around 5 years. That's not a good record.
That's all just under one a year.
The other, right. In terms of how our role works too, is that we're not, in terms of making decisions, we have to have a quorum of trustees in order to make official decisions.
Right.
Otherwise, we can only talk to one trustee at a time in terms of handling business. So what I take from that, if you're working 70, 75 hours a week, one, you probably I don't know if you have a job or, if you have time for a work-life balance. But the other thing is there's probably a lot of backdoor deals happening, right? There's probably a lot of, you're probably, I'm trying to figure out what you would be doing, right? Maybe you're talking to developers, maybe you're, maybe you're talking to other elected officials, which there is time for that. All mayors and elected officials, they're going to DC advocating, they're going to Springfield advocating. That is a part of
don't they report that? Don't they report that? Isn't the mayor responsible for reporting what he or she is doing?
No, they're not responsible for necessarily recording what they're doing day to day. We're responsible for having board meetings and for voting on businesses, village business. But again, that's why, that salary increase was really big, because the mayor isn't really responsible for a whole lot in our town. And so I think we need to change our form of government so it aligns with, if that's what the people want, or we should just kind of lean in, because there's a lot you do, right? I mean, even though, the role isn't this full-time role, there's a lot that you can do. But essentially now, what I would sum up as doing, there's a lot of conversations that are probably happening behind the scenes that the community just doesn't know about. And if it's working in our favor, maybe not. I just think, based on Illinois' history with elected officials and, backdoor deals and kickbacks and et cetera, you just want to be careful. And that's not, I'm not suggesting I know anything, because I don't. But what I'm saying is that you just want to be careful, and you want to do the role that you're supposed to be doing. You don't want, especially when you're using public resources, whether it be the village vehicle, whether it be the village's tax dollars, you want to be respectful, and you want to abide by the rules,
transparent,
and be transparent. And that's it. And so as long as we're doing that, that's fine. And when we're not doing that, I just want to let the residents know what's going on and let them decide for themselves.
So I'm going to say two things really quick, because I thank you for your transparency and explaining in detail. Taking a deeper dive on the issues that matter to the residents, because they talk about in mainstream media, social media as well. But two things come to mind. The monies that you receive from the casino, that's happening in perpetuity, which means it's going to happen on a regular basis. And then, second, addressing the issues, the debt, such as property taxes and things like that. And then, of course, the upcoming increase in income notwithstanding. That's why I continue to nudge about the importance of having a strategic plan to make it transparent and make it clear, and that the residents are informed. So I just want to put that out there, Trustee Jones, and get your thoughts in closing about that before we wrap up the show. So what are your thoughts about what I said in terms of that nature, really quickly?
No, you're absolutely right. The village has opportunities to improve its financial base and our tax base, across the board. Thankful to State Senator Kimberly Lyford for pushing that bill to where the Bally's Casino in Chicago, the village is going to be getting a percentage of the net profit, and is getting a percentage. Now it's not super significant, maybe it's $10,000 or $15,000 a month, which is significant, but in terms of we have a $40-50 million budget. But that will pick up, as that casino moves, until its full or its permanent location. And so, we're going to be expecting, significant resources for that. And then that's where we're going to be able to, come up with some opportunities to finance more improvements and to invest in our town. But we do need a strategic plan. And so that's something, as the finance committee chair, I'll be looking to get the community up to speed on. We're still working on getting caught up on our audits. So we kind of know exactly from a financial audit perspective where we are. And, that's going to be my focus. But Dr. Ratliff, I did want to make one comment too, that we had talked about offline, that I want to bring up in terms of this, kind of going back to this salary thing. And, some residents saying or being concerned that the reason that I did or did not support it was because I'm interested in also running for mayor of the town. I would say if I was a selfish person, I would have, let's raise it to $200,000, right? And so then I could run for mayor, and let's say if I was fortunate enough to win, I'd get that salary. But that isn't my mindset. I'm of the mindset that it depends on the form of government, but ultimately in our form of government, it's expected, or people, expect for you to be able to fund your own lifestyle, and to, ultimately work part-time, and to, serve the village part-time. So that's my philosophy. Even if I was running for mayor, I don't want the taxpayers paying that type of money, for part-time roles, right? I would want to be reasonable, and I would want to respect our tax dollars. So if it was for personal reasons, and if I didn't have a job, and if I was struggling, and maybe I would say, hey, I'd say, hey, Mayor, I amend it. Let's go to 200,000, right?
Right.
And then let me go out here and convince everybody to drop out and run, and let's get this money, right?
Right. You mean backdoor conversations and all that, getting ready to,
right? Yeah, of course, right? No, that's not the game plan. That doesn't move Maywood forward, right? And it doesn't improve our reputation amongst our neighbors, right?
Yeah,
because they read this too, and communities see that, right?
Yeah,
and so I care about Maywood's reputation, and so this conversation isn't necessarily to diss anyone that's sitting in these roles now, because again, it doesn't affect anyone in these roles now currently. It's about the next cycle, but again, I just want to be respectful of our taxpayers, the ones that have been there for a long time, the ones whose tax bills did go up. I don't want them to feel like we don't care, or that we didn't feel their pain, because a lot of people, it's a struggle out here. Even though those home values went up, but when home values go up, so do the property taxes, and so we want to just be thoughtful of that. And so I just want to clarify that for anyone that was wondering why I decided not to vote against that or whatever. If I wanted to be the mayor, and if I wanted to maximize the compensation, I'd have upped it to. I'd up it to whatever. But I do want to give those trustees credit who did approve that, so the residents know. So Trustee Sanchez, Trustee Williams, Trustee Lightford, and Mayor Booker, you guys do deserve the credit for increasing those salaries so significantly. And so I want to make it.
So I'm going to say, being from Maywood, somebody who's passionate about Maywood, somebody who did my master thesis and my dissertation about Maywood, is still engaged with Maywood, even here from the DMV, justify that increase is all I'm going to say. So you got the vote, to the four of you, put into action. I know you started to move towards that direction. However, it's not justified yet. So for others who speak for like myself, justify that. So, there's no hate, no knocking, or whatever you want to call in your mindset, you got to justify that joint. So if you got that pay increase, justify it. Reduce the property taxes, increase employment, decrease crime, increase the sales revenue, whatever it is that's in need, the resources, like you said, the Frankhampton pool, I always call it the pool, improve that or replace it, whatever. When you start money coming in, don't just spend it, plan it, strategic plan, put together that strategic plan so you can make it transparent so anyone can see it. So that's what I want to see. That's my call for action to justify that salary increase, even in the next cycle. So I commend you for being objective, Trustee Jones, but I still say justify it, so this won't be a topic of conversation any longer as the next cycle rolls in, by those of us who love Maywood, who have been part of Maywood for over 5 decades, and some even longer. So that's all I'll say about that.
Absolutely. And I think we substantiated by doing our homework, right? Bringing comps, bringing comparables, hours worked. That's great, but I'm cautious for enabling the idea that I want anyone working 300 hours for this, or that's what success means. Right. We have very smart people in our town. We need to delegate. We need to empower. We need to. This needs to be a grassroots effort to bring this town back. Absolutely. Because we don't need a hero in Maywood. We need catalysts of change. We need folks that are just going to be servant leaders, heavy on the servant leaders, right? People that we need smart people. We need team players, and so that's how we move forward. Is by doing the work, but also engaging the residents. And so what I'm going to be doing is engaging the residents on making sure that their voices are heard. And before we can get to April, we have an election in November. And so I want to encourage everyone to participate. There's a lot on the line in this election. And, there's going to be history accomplished no matter what happens. And so I want to encourage everyone to participate and to cast your vote, and and to come up with a plan to vote and bring somebody with you. And then after that, I'm going to be encouraging the residents to vote too, and not just to talk about the mayor, but as I mentioned, that vote to pass those salaries, the mayor was a tie-breaking vote. That means the trustees were split 3-3. And so it's also important to understand the trustees are very important. And that should be the conversation of the April 2025 election, is what we want the board to look like.
Right.
Let's have a board vision, because again, the meeting is called the Board of Trustees.
Right.
It's not called the Board of Village President or Mayor. And there's
Right.
a reason for that, right? And it's because those trustees, there's 6 of them. And it used to be back in the day that you had different kind of zones, and,
right.
the community was based on,
yeah.
Wards and et cetera.
Yeah.
And so that's how important that was, right? And you had all that representation coming up, and then you'd have the village president or the mayor chairing that. Right. And now we've kind of lost focus a little bit and kind of changed it to like this strong person type of thing. And that's kind of what we're seeing in other forms, right? And some people want that type of leadership. And so my thought is, let's bring it to the residents about what they want. But ultimately, my leadership style is servant leadership, delegating, true democracy, right. Having people that want to serve, that are capable. And when people feel like they were involved in the decisions to move forward, they care more.
Inclusion.
So we want to actually care. When they're a part of the solution, they care more. When they feel like there's someone forcing the solution, they don't kind of care more. Like if I know someone's going to pick up after me, I'll throw trash outside.
Right.
Because I know someone's going to clean up after me. When I'm bought in and I know, hey, I got to, I'm responsible for that, or I know my neighbor's going to have to do it, I'm less likely to do it. I know my neighbor has to do it, or I'm going to have to do it. So I'm less, so I just use that analogy as to say, let's get engaged. Let's get excited. Nothing in life worth having happens when you have lukewarm enthusiasm. So shout out to my Omega friends, for that quote, but it's true. So let's get some enthusiasm. Let's get excited. Let's get engaged, and let's make some decisions that benefit our communities.
I would like to add, Trustee Jones, let's increase that voting turnout in November. Absolutely. As well as next April. So I want to give you an opportunity. We said a lot. We talked for almost an hour, but it was very substantial. It was substance and not just rhetoric. So I want to give you the floor, if you have another minute or two, to share any closing thoughts with your constituents.
Yeah, I would share with Maywoodians that I'm proud of the direction that our community is going in, but I definitely want to let you know that I know that there's a lot more to be desired, and there's a lot more work to be done. And so that's my job, is to be transparent with you all about things that need to be done, and to get your input and to bring those inputs to the board. But residents, it's now your turn, right, to voice your opinion, whether it be in November or in April. And so what I would like to do is encourage you to find someone in the community who would have a sound opinion on this. And if you don't know anyone, I'll volunteer myself, reach out to them and get engaged. So my cell phone number, and I don't mind sharing it, is 708-288-8604. That's my village cell. You can call me and I could point you in the right direction, but let's start having the important conversations, and let's move forward, in a fashion that works out for everyone. And so that's my call to action to the residents, is to get involved. This isn't an election, either one, that you want to sit out on. And it's not just about whether it be the president or the mayor of a town. Focus on your local, your board members, whether it be trustees, and also focus on those other races as well, judges, and other things that are state representatives and et cetera. So do your homework, be intentional, and let people know that you're not afraid for your voice to be heard, and you will be heard, because that's important. Because ultimately the fix is in terms of our communities. Black and brown communities will be the majority in about 10 or 20 years. And so there is a intentional effort to have you feel like this system isn't going to work for you, because it's intentional, because the country's changing, right? And so it's really important for us to lean in now, right? And take advantage of it. The communities, the 4 largest cities in America are run by Black people. There's a lot of immigration happening. There's a lot of Black and brown people coming in America. And this is our time to advocate for what we want and to play the game the right way. So it's one thing to get your presidential candidate in, but focus on Congress, right? Focus on, building what needs to be necessary and learning from, what we should have taken away from the presidency of Barack Obama, and what we could do to make sure we set up the next, president, whoever you're voting for. You also have to have a Congress, and the same thing for, a mayor or a board. You got to have a strong board. If you want a strong board, you got to vote them in. It's not just one person. So I would say that's the mission is let's get educated. Lean on me if you need to, but let's get educated and let's make our voices heard.
Absolutely. Well said, Trustee Jones. And you hit the nail on the head. November is critical. We look at the other races, not just the presidential race, looking at the congressional, elections, the Senate elections, and, of course, other seats that are fighting for cross country and high impacts, Maywood locally. So I definitely appreciate you coming on again and sharing knowledge with the constituents. And, we pray for continued improvement in the village of Maywood. And we thank people like yourself, a leader in the community and a pillar for the community that's doing your work and doing your due diligence and, just showing us that you really truly love your village and care about our well-being. So thank you again, Trustee Jones. And with that said, I encourage you to vote. The election is right around the corner. It's a matter of weeks from today. Today is October 17th. It's right around the corner. Early voting is taking place in some states, and take advantage of that. But most importantly, vote. Regardless of who is for, vote. And our voter turnaround amongst African Americans is very low. And so we need to improve that to show that we care. And until then, spread the word. If you need to give a ride to someone, a senior citizen, or a young person who's voting for the first time, get out there and vote and get engaged and get active, especially in the village of Maywood. We need everybody. Grassroots is what's going to grow the community. And with that, that concludes our podcast. Tune in next time for our next guests. And until then, be safe. Continue to pray for your village and for our country. God bless you and good night.